Hi friends, it's me, Liliana, with Hestia's Muse, and I wanted to do a quick video update of the astrology through this holiday weekend. A lot of us are going to be traveling or having events with family and dealing with shopping, or if you're working in the public, you're dealing with a lot of stress right now, and there's a lot going on astrologically just through the next 4, 5 days. So let's look at it and see what it is that's going on so we can bring some awareness and some mindfulness with us through the holiday weekend. So first of all, the sun has just entered the sign of Sagittarius today. Early this morning, the sun moved out of Scorpio and into the sign of Sagittarius. So it has moved into a fire sign that is ruled by Jupiter. This is just a very big shift in energy, and we're not going to feel like we have a lot of time to adjust to that shift in energy before like all of the things that we're doing through the weekend begin, right? Especially considering that the sun, as it moves into Sagittarius, is immediately moving into a square aspect with Saturn. So the sun square Saturn in astrology can be a really challenging time period. The sun's energy clashes with Saturn's restrictive influence, which can lead to obstacles, limitations, or just a feeling of heaviness in your pursuits. The key is to face and overcome these challenges with patience, discipline, and a realistic outlook. This aspect encourages individuals to strengthen your foundations and address weaknesses in your personal or professional lives. Although this can temporarily be like taking a hit to your confidence level, because the sun is confidence and Saturn is restriction. So there's something here that's perhaps causing that imposter syndrome, or just that lack of confidence, or your confidence is just feeling restricted and weighed down. But this presents an opportunity for personal growth through having perseverance and a willingness to take on extra responsibilities. Saturn is giving the sun a reality check and maybe a little bit of an ego check that perhaps we all need at this time. As the sun moves into Sagittarius, there's this boost of fiery energy that is feeling very confident and like ready to just take on the world. And Saturn is saying, hey, now slow down. You may not be prepared for all of the things that you're taking on. So here's a bit of a reality check. Here's a bit of a restriction. And Saturn's goal is not to ruin the fun, but it is to keep you safe and to keep you working towards the long-term goals in a responsible and respectful way. So another thing going on with Sun square Saturn is the sun represents the sense of individuality, the sense of youthful vibrancy, and it's often associated with children. And Saturn represents authority figures and our parents or grandparents or older generations. And they're in this conflicting aspect just as we go into the holiday weekend, which is kind of amplifying if there's any existing conflict between the older generations versus the younger generations in your family dynamic. If you have some headbutting going on between older family members maybe wanting to stick to certain traditions, and then the younger generations wanting to step away from those traditions, there's going to be a headbutting that's happening. There's going to be conflict, because a square aspect is always a conflict. And this square aspect is featuring the Sun versus Saturn, which is the younger generations versus the older generations, or the desire for freedom and individuality versus the desire for a structured and traditional approach. So, hey, that's going on. It's good to be aware of, so that when you're encountering any of these conflicts, you're not taking it so personally. So this square is featuring the Sun in critical degree Sagittarius versus Saturn in critical degree Pisces. Both are at 0 degrees of their restrictive signs. They're both in mutable signs, and they're both at that critical degree. So just watch out for this one, because it's really strong, and it's going to have us questioning our own wisdom and intuition. It's going to have us maybe feeling really uncomfortable. And what's going on mostly is that there's a need to change and adapt when necessary, and to discern when you need to stand strong versus when you need to give a little, right? There's sometimes where you have to choose your battles, and sometimes you can give a little, you can compromise a little, and there's other times when compromising is not what you want to be doing. So you have to use your discernment, use your wisdom to know when to stay strong versus when to compromise or adapt or be a little willing to go with the flow. Mostly just be patient with yourself and with others through this challenging energy. Additionally, at the same time as this Sun square Saturn is taking place, we have Mars in the final degree of Scorpio, and that's been a very strong energy for the past 6 weeks or so, and it's in the final degree, so it's really, really pushing that energy. It's like when you're at the last day of an event and you're trying to wrap everything up and make sure that you did all of the things, that you're wrapping everything up properly. So a planet in the final degree of a sign is also considered a critical degree, because it is just like trying to finish up, like, did you really get the lessons that I was teaching to you while I was in this sign? Additionally, Mars is also in a square aspect with Saturn, and that is going to get stronger when Mars comes into Sagittarius, because then it'll be a really strong aspect, but we're already feeling some of that now. So the Mars square Saturn transit signifies this impulsive and assertive energy of Mars clashing with that disciplined and restrictive influence of Saturn. This aspect is bringing forth more obstacles and frustrations, and we kind of have this urge to confront our problems head on. And Saturn wants us to be strategic and have planning and be patient and perseverance, and Mars wants us to confront, attack, and push through. And so both of these planets are feeling very strongly, and we have to again use that mindfulness and discernment to know which energy is the right one to apply at this time. Do I benefit from applying this Mars combat energy, or is it better if I am more strategic and patient and just persevere, right? So the lesson lies in finding a balance between assertiveness and restraint. Understanding that our impulsive actions may be met with resistance because Mars is in that square to Saturn. It emphasizes the importance of a structured and disciplined approach to achieving our goals, and highlighting the value of hard work and endurance. So there may be roadblocks and delays and just conflict or headbutting, but overall this is encouraging you to learn from setbacks, to build resilience and cultivate a more mature and focused approach to going after your ambitions and ensuring that your actions are aligned with your long-term goals. So this square has been building up for the past week, and it reaches a climax when Mars enters Sagittarius and comes into an exact square with Saturn in Pisces. So Mars is trailing right behind the Sun, and the Sun moves into Sagittarius and into this square with Saturn, and then right after that, Mars is going to move into Sagittarius and come into this square with Saturn. So Mars is kind of amplifying the existing square between the Sun and Saturn and really kind of ramping up that energy. It's adding more fire and a feisty energy to it. So this is absolutely a time to employ patience and remember to remain flexible, and remember that sometimes compromise is necessary. Both the Mars and Sun in Sagittarius have us feeling ready to jump into action. But this square with Saturn urges some caution and a more restricted, careful, cautious, and responsible approach. Remember to look at the big picture and take an approach that provides long-term stability. I think about the story of the tortoise and the hare ended up losing because he was overconfident and just didn't focus on the goal of winning, because he thought there's no way that the tortoise can beat me, so I'm just not even gonna really put that much effort and focus into the race. And he ended up losing because he was messing around, and the tortoise won because he just stayed focused and persevered through the energy. And in this situation, I feel like the Sun and Mars and Mercury coming into Sagittarius are very much feeling like the hare in the story. They're very confident. And Saturn in Pisces is the tortoise that is like, okay, we're not going fast, but we're going to get there. We're going to persevere. We're going to stay focused and responsible and mature and just keep plodding along and get where we're going. So yeah, we have this whole weekend where the Sun is entering Sagittarius on November 22nd with the Moon in Aries. So Aries is ruled by Mars, so the Moon in Aries is kind of giving Mars this really strong voice right now. And then the Sun is squaring Saturn over the whole week, but mostly on the 22nd and the 23rd and the 24th. And then on the 24th, Mars, which has also been squaring Saturn, enters Sagittarius early in the morning. So Mars moves from Scorpio into Sagittarius and amplifies that Mars square Saturn, while the Sun is still squaring Saturn, because Mars and the Sun are still in a close conjunction. They're just a couple of degrees apart, so they're very much doing stuff together. And so Mars in Sagittarius brings this like adventurous energy. It's the planet of action and desire. And Sagittarius is very optimistic and expansive. And there's just this really energized optimism that feels like, oh good, I get to spring forward into action, and then it's going to immediately run into some kind of opposition or roadblock or challenge because of Saturn giving this very strong square aspect from Pisces. So that is the main thing that is going on over the next few days to be aware of. But there's also this thing going on with Mercury that you should be aware of. So Mercury is currently also in the sign of Sagittarius. And on November 25th, Mercury enters the pre-shadow of the retrograde. So the next Mercury retrograde is not officially beginning until December 13th. But on November 25th, Mercury's entering the retrograde zone. So this retrograde zone extends from 22 degrees Sagittarius through 8 degrees Capricorn. And when Mercury reaches 8 degrees Capricorn, it's going to turn around and retrograde back all the way back to 22 degrees Sagittarius. So on the 25th is when Mercury reaches this zone, and it's going to be moving more slowly as it comes through and prepares for the retrograde. So it's slowing down, and it's also just going over this section of the zodiac for the first time. It's going to go over it 3 times during the retrograde, first forward, then backward, and then forward again. So although the retrograde hasn't started yet, Mercury is slowing down and it's entering the retrograde zone. And this is called the pre-shadow. This is the pre-game. This is Mercury is teaching you some lessons, and whatever lessons are coming up with Mercury now are lessons that are going to come back up again during the retrograde. And we can even start feeling like things are retrograde during a pre-shadow because of that slowing down energy. And so it's just, again, being aware of our communication, planning ahead to give yourself extra time for travel, double checking your mistakes in anything that you're writing down, any contracts that you're signing. I don't think that Mercury is causing problems, but the problems that happen during a Mercury retrograde are ones that are really things that we should pay attention to. So they tend to feel stronger when there's a travel delay or a communication problem during a Mercury retrograde. It's really trying to get our attention about an issue that needs to be resolved or wanting us to pay attention in a certain kind of way. So it's not that these problems only come up during a Mercury retrograde, because there's travel delays and communication problems all the time. It's just during a retrograde and during the right before and right after a retrograde, these are the problems that the cosmos or whatever just wants us to really pay attention to. So it's really like, hey, are you looking at this? Pay attention here, right? So part of it is the Mercury is slowing down and getting ready to go into this retrograde zone. But the main reason that it's going to feel like a Mercury retrograde is happening already is because Mercury is going to be squaring Neptune. So the other planet that's in Pisces is Neptune, and Mercury, as it reaches this final decan of Sagittarius, is coming into this square aspect with Neptune. And this on its own, regardless of if there's a retrograde or not, can form this confusing type of atmosphere. So Mercury is communication, and Neptune is kind of dreamy and elusive and not straightforward, right? And so this aspect can lead to confusion, misunderstandings, and unclear thinking. The lesson that we learn from this transit is to communicate carefully and process information discerningly. It's really important to be cautious of deception, whether that is intentional or unintentional. So the potential to get pulled into something that's not true, to maybe fall for the propaganda or the false narrative is very strong. And so we don't want to be making significant decisions without stopping and like, let's double check the facts here. Let's make sure that my information is correct before I make a big decision or sign a contract or get into something that I can't back out of. And we don't want to make significant decisions that are based entirely on our intuition, because our intuition right now is probably going to be a little bit off, because Neptune is still retrograde and it is squaring Mercury, which is the planet of the mind, your thoughts, and how you process information. So there's just something going on here that requires us to be more critical and evaluate the information that we have with more discernment, and to adopt a more precise and rational approach to our communication and our decision making and our travel plans. It's just, really important that we are staying mindful of our own illusions, of the own, be mindful of the way that you can be delulu, because we're all feeling extra delulu right now with this Mercury square Neptune, especially as Mercury starts to slow down and get ready for the retrograde. So it's a powerful reminder to double check our information, be mindful of our capability of becoming sucked in through misinformation or propaganda, and just seek clarity and double check your sources, triple check your sources, and don't rush into any big decisions or signing any contracts without making sure that you read the fine print and just pay attention to what's being said that's not being said. Like, what's going on between the lines, behind the scenes. Double check, because there's just a lot. And this mutable square between Mercury and Neptune is that Sagittarius versus Pisces energy again. So it's once more featuring this challenging Sagittarius versus Pisces mutable energy, which we've already experienced with the square between Sun, Mars, and Saturn. And so this square that is later in the degrees of Sagittarius and Pisces is like a continuation of that story, but it's adding another layer, another lesson, and a whole different vibe because it's got different planets involved. And so Mercury's leading the way, because eventually the Sun and Mars are also going to come into a square aspect with Neptune when they reach the third decan of Sagittarius. And so Mercury is just instigating or starting off this ongoing Neptune challenge that's going to be recurring through the rest of 2023 as the Sun and then Mars move through Sagittarius. So it's a lot. I appreciate you guys listening to the video and checking in with what's going on. There will be updates about like each of these individual things throughout the weekend on my social media, on Instagram and Facebook, but I wanted to offer a video format too, just to maybe you like that format better, and we're going to see how this goes. So anyways, I hope that you'll have a really great weekend and take care of yourself. Remember to apply patience and discernment, and if you need to step away to hold your own boundaries and protect your own peace, absolutely do that. And then this is all culminating up to the Gemini full moon on the night of, I think, the 25th into the early morning of the 26th. Double checking the full moon is in Gemini the early morning hours of November 26th. And so it's kind of almost full as it's in Taurus the night of the 25th. And then reaches that fullness early morning on the 26th in the sign of Gemini. So all of this is just leading up to a Gemini full moon, which is even more to talk about, but I don't want to make this video too long, so I will just leave you with that awareness that the full, like, all of this stuff throughout this weekend is gonna be culminating with that full moon in Gemini on the morning of the 26th. So remember to practice your self-care and hold safe, healthy boundaries for yourself, and practice mindfulness, because there is a lot going on through this whole weekend. So hang in there. You've got it.